What's up, Packers fans? Mark Oldacres back here with another episode, the final episode, in fact, of the Packers Prospect Series ahead of the 2024 NFL Draft. And today we're going to be looking at the safety class. Now, of course, safety is a huge position of importance for the Packers in this draft. They picked up Xavier McKinney in free agency, of course, but they're going to need some more help there. They don't have a lot besides him on the roster right now that you can rely on. So you can bet the Packers are going to draft at least one, if not multiple safeties in this draft. So let's get into it and talk about the kind of players that they're going to be looking for and 5 specific players to watch out for on draft weekend. Now, looking at the kind of what the Packers like from the safety position, generally with this series we've looked at what they've done since Brian Gutekunst has been here. We don't have much of a track record to go on there because he's only drafted 3 safeties since he became the Packers GM, and only 2 of them had athletic testing at all. They were Darnell Savage and Anthony Johnson Jr. Both of them were very, very good athletes. They both had great explosion scores in the kind of 80th percentile or higher. Both pretty fast too. 4.54 was the slowest of the 2. That was Johnson Jr. They both at least had a 1.56 10-yard split or better. That's the 82nd percentile. Obviously, we can't rely too much on these because it's only a couple of players. But if you go back even further to kind of Ted Thompson era, the standards don't change too much. It gives you a little bit more leeway on some of the drills, and we're going to kind of work with that today and talk about kind of guys who maybe they don't hit the exact perfect description of what Savage and Johnson Jr. did, but in the Thompson era, which of course he had a heavy influence on Brian Gutekunst, these are safeties that they would have taken then. You can probably think that they would take them now still too. The other one, size, not really a big deal for them based on the fact that they took Darnell Savage in the first round just a few years ago. He was a little over 5'10 and a half, 198 pounds, so the size element not as important for them. So let's dive into the players themselves then. Who are we going to talk about today? First up is Javon Bullard from Georgia. Now, he has quickly become my sneaky first round pick option for the Green Bay Packers. And I wouldn't take him in the first round. I have a solid second round grade on Bullard. But the more I think about it, the more it starts to make sense. First of all, he's a defensive back from Georgia. He may be ranked 58th, I think it is, on the consensus board right now. But Eric Stokes, who they drafted just 3 years ago, he was 56th on the consensus board. They took him late in the first round. He hits everything pretty much that they look for athletically from a safety. We'll get into his profile now. He's 5'10 and 2/5. So just a little bit shorter than Savage, but he's taller than some of the safeties they've taken in the Thompson era. 198 pounds, 8.25 relative athletic score. He had an elite speed score. He ran a 4.47 and a great agility score. He did the short shuttle drill in 3.97 seconds, which is absolutely freaky athleticism. He has all the movement skills he needs. You see that on tape. He gives his all in run defense, which is he really defies his size in that aspect. I feel like his tackling technique is really sound, and that kind of makes up for the lack of size. He tackles a lot better than some of the bigger safeties in this draft. I wouldn't say he's special, but I just like his game really all around. He's shown he can cover receivers. He can cover wide receivers. He has the ability to do that. Part of the appeal with Bullard is that he played slot corner for an entire season, basically, in 2022. So he has extensive experience at slot corner and at safety. He's athletic enough to be a Packer in both positions. And to me, it would be a reach. People would say it was a reach. But to me, this is like how last year everybody wanted Brian Branch. I'm not saying his tape is as good as Brian Branch's was, but he's a more athletic version of that type of player of a Brian Branch, where you can play him some at safety, some in the slot. And the Packers are still looking for that. He's also very similar to Darnell Savage. The measurements are very similar. The athleticism, very similar. And after they drafted Savage in 2019 and that experiment didn't work, they might still want that kind of profile of player in their defensive backfield. So I think Bullard just makes so much sense for the Packers. We'll see if it happens, but I'm becoming more and more convinced as we go on that he is going to be possibly the Packers' first pick in the entire draft, whether that's at 25 or they think they can trade back and get him a little bit later, pick up some extra capital. Moving on to Kitan Oladapo from Oregon State. I think he's one of the most underrated players in this entire draft. He's a big safety too. He's 6'2", 216 pounds, an 8.18 relative athletic score, although he did not do the agility drills. We'll come to that in a second. He has elite size, as you can guess from the measurables that we just said there. Good speed, still 4.58. It's not record-breaking by any stretch, but it's good. It's plenty good enough. He shows the ability on tape to do basically everything you want from a safety. He could be a 3-down player. He can cover. He can hit. He runs well. He kind of just ticks all the boxes for me. He's just very well-rounded. There could be a little question, and we don't have the agility testing to know it. I think he gets by right now. There's a question for me whether he is a little bit stiff-hipped, and at the next level, whether he can consistently cover NFL players, NFL, athletes. But he did it well in college. It's just kind of a little nagging concern in the back of my head. That's the only reason I can see why people maybe don't have this guy higher than he currently is kind of slated. I think he's seen as like maybe a 5th round pick, something like that. I have him as a solid 3rd rounder. I don't expect him to go there, but I just think he's very underrated. Next up is Jaden Hicks from Washington State. This is a name that's been gathering some steam in recent weeks, mainly because he tested a lot better than I think people expected him to. People kind of thought he was just going to be a box safety, and that's all. But the testing kind of said maybe he can do everything. Maybe he can play back in the post and cover and do it all. 6'1 and 2/3, 211 pounds, 8.97 RAS. Great size, good speed. He ran a 4.5. Good explosion, good agility. So very well rounded. Did all the testing. You like to see that. He has all the physical tools to be an all-around safety and do everything. There's some parts of every phase of safety play that he is good at and you really like, and then there's some parts of every phase that concern you a little bit. But he's still young. He's only 22 years old, so he can grow, and he's, again, another kind of day 2 option. I think where consensus has him right now is kind of middle of the 3rd round. That makes sense to me. But he definitely has the talent to play on all 3 downs, with some development, so that's great. Next up is Cole Bishop from Utah, another player that a lot of Packers fans are very well aware of. 6'2", 206, 9.88 RAS, which sounds amazing. However, he didn't do the agilities, so those could have dragged him down, theoretically. Elite speed, 4.45. People did not see that coming. He absolutely did fantastic in Indy at the Combine. Elite explosion scores as well. Great size, as you can tell from the measurements, 6'2", 206. He defends the run pretty well. He blitzes. He's very good blitzer. You can see the explosiveness that he has to kind of trigger downhill. But I wouldn't say he's an elite run defender. I don't think it's like a true, a real, it is a plus, but it's just not elite. It's not like, wow, as a run defender. The coverage is serviceable. It's not special. There's some things you're just going to not want to ask him to do. He can give up separation if you're leaving him in kind of man situations a lot. But he shows the ability to do it. This is another guy who can play all 3 downs. That's what you want. That's what we're looking at with a lot of these guys here. He can do all the assignments. He can play deep. He can play in the box. Is he going to play slot corner? Probably not. But he's a talented player. He's been flying up the draft boards ever since he tested as well as he did, to pair with that kind of solid tape that he has. And he's maybe, again, a day 2 option potentially for the Packers. And then finally on this list is Dadrion Taylor-Demerson from Texas Tech. 5'10 and 1/3, 197 pounds, 8.11 RAS with elite speed and great explosion. He ran 4.41 in the 40, which is obviously excellent. He has all the athleticism in the world, as we just talked about. It totally shows up on tape. He flies around out there. You can see it really pops out off the tape how athletic he is. He plays the run fine and gives really good effort, but he lacks some size for it, as we talked about there. 5'10", 197. He's not the biggest guy like Javon Bullard. For me, he just kind of lacks some instincts. He takes false steps, and that kind of impacts him in both the run game and the pass game. And I think at the moment he makes up for it because he has such good athleticism, especially compared to the guys he's playing against in college, that he can close the angle that he created for the running back or for the receiver because he's so fast. But at the NFL level, I just don't think that's going to fly as much. He doesn't contribute in coverage as much as I would like to see from a guy who's as athletic as he is. And he just kind of lacks those instincts. I think maybe he's like a round 4 guy for me, which again is still fine. There's plenty of good options here. As much as this is talked about as not a very good safety class, there's guys here that you can develop and will be, at worst, solid starters, I think, in the NFL for a long time. So the Packers have good options. They're going to address it in this draft, and these 5 guys are definitely names to watch out for because they could have their names called by the Packers during draft weekend. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like below. Leave a comment on any other safeties that you think I missed or that you want the Packers to go after. Subscribe to CHTV if you're not already. You can find my writing over there at cheeseheadtv.com as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Mark Oldacres, and go Pack Go.